The car's headlights cut through the thickening mist as Evelyn Carter navigated the winding country road, her hands tight on the steering wheel. The GPS had lost its signal miles ago, and now only the faded map on her phone guided her, the blue dot inching closer to their destination, Hollow Manor. The name itself seemed to echo in the silence of the night, as if the house was already aware of their approach. Beside her, Sarah sat curled up in the passenger seat, her knees drawn to her chest, eyes flickering between the road and the dense woods pressing in on either side. "Are you sure this is the right way?" she asked for the third time, her voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn forced a reassuring smile. "It's the only road for miles, Sarah. We're almost there. See?" She gestured to the looming shadow ahead. Through the fog, the iron gates of Hollow Manor appeared, ornate yet rusted, twisted into shapes that might have once been flowers or vines, but now looked more like grasping fingers. She slowed the car to a stop, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The gates stood half ajar, as if waiting for them. Beyond, the driveway vanished into darkness, flanked by towering yew trees whose branches arched overhead, forming a tunnel that swallowed the moonlight. Sarah shivered. "This place gives me the creeps." "That's the point," Evelyn said, grabbing her bag and stepping out into the chilly air. "It's supposed to be haunted, remember? That's why we're here." She tried to sound confident, but the truth was the manor's reputation had unnerved her since she'd first read about it. Stories of ghostly apparitions, mysterious deaths, and strange lights in the windows had circulated for decades. As a journalist, she prided herself on skepticism, but tonight, even she felt the weight of unseen eyes. They walked up the driveway, the crunch of their footsteps loud in the stillness. The manor slowly emerged from the fog, a sprawling Victorian structure with turrets, gables, and a roofline bristling with chimneys. Ivy crawled up the stone walls, and most of the windows were dark, save for a faint glow in the front hall. Evelyn rang the bell, its clang echoing through the house. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, footsteps approached from within, slow and deliberate. The door creaked open to reveal a tall, thin man with silver hair and deep-set eyes, his face lined with age. "Miss Carter?" he asked, his voice gravelly but polite. "That's me," Evelyn replied, extending a hand. "And this is my sister, Sarah." He nodded, ignoring her hand. "Thomas Granger. I'm the caretaker. You're expected. Please come in." They stepped into a grand foyer, its marble floor cracked and dusty. A chandelier hung overhead, its crystals dulled by years of neglect. The walls were lined with portraits, men and women in stiff Victorian dress, their eyes following the newcomers with silent accusation. Thomas led them down a dim corridor to a sitting room. A fire crackled in the hearth, its warmth barely touching the chill that seemed to seep from the very stones. "You'll be staying in the East Wing," he said. "I prepared your rooms. If you need anything, I'll be in the caretaker's quarters." Evelyn set her bag down and glanced around. The room was filled with heavy furniture covered in white sheets, the corners thick with cobwebs. Only 2 armchairs by the fire were free of dust. Sarah hovered by the window, peering out at the dark grounds. "How old is this place?" "Built in 1852, Thomas replied. "The original owner, Lord Ashcombe, lost his wife and daughter here. Some say their spirits never left." He spoke the words without emotion, as if reciting a grocery list. Evelyn perked up, her reporter's instincts kicking in. Is that why people say it's haunted? Thomas's lips twitched into a faint smile. People say many things about Hollow Manor. Most of them are best ignored. He excused himself, leaving the sisters alone. Evelyn pulled out her notebook and began jotting down first impressions. The air felt heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Sarah wandered over to a portrait above the mantel, a young woman in a white dress, her eyes hauntingly sad. "She looks familiar," Sarah murmured. Evelyn joined her. "Probably the daughter. Lord Ashcombe's tragedy is well documented. Some say he went mad after their deaths." Sarah shivered. "Do you really think we'll see a ghost?" Evelyn laughed, though it sounded hollow. "I think we'll see a lot of creaky floorboards and maybe a mouse or two. But if there's a story here, I'll find it." They explored the rest of the East Wing, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Their rooms were side by side, each furnished with a brass bed, a wardrobe, and a small writing desk. The wallpaper was peeling, and the windows rattled in their frames. As Evelyn unpacked, she heard a faint whisper, like a sigh carried on the wind. She paused, listening, but the sound was gone. Later, as they prepared for bed, Sarah lingered in the doorway. "Promise you won't leave me alone tonight?" Evelyn smiled. "Of course. We'll stick together." They climbed into their beds, the silence pressing in from all sides. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed midnight. Evelyn stared at the ceiling, her mind racing with questions. What secrets did Hollow Manor hold? And what waited for them in the darkness? As sleep finally claimed her, she dreamed of a woman in white, standing at the foot of her bed, eyes filled with sorrow, lips moving in a silent plea. The wind howled outside Hollow Manor, rattling the window panes and sending shadows dancing across the faded wallpaper. Evelyn awoke with a start, her heart thudding in her chest. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The unfamiliar room, the musty scent of old linens, the oppressive silence. Then it all came rushing back. The long drive, the looming manor, the caretaker's wary eyes. She glanced at her phone. 2:13 a.m. The battery was nearly dead, the screen casting a faint blue glow across the room. She listened, straining to hear anything beyond the wind. The house seemed to be holding its breath. A soft knock sounded at her door. Evelyn sat up, the bed springs creaking beneath her. "Sarah," she called, voice barely above a whisper. The door opened, and Sarah slipped inside, her face pale and drawn. "I can't sleep," she murmured. "Something's wrong with this place." Evelyn patted the edge of her bed. "Come here." Sarah curled up beside her, shivering despite the heavy quilt. Evelyn draped an arm around her shoulders. "It's just an old house. Everything creaks." Sarah shook her head. "It's not the house. It's something else. I keep hearing voices, whispering like someone standing right outside my door." Evelyn frowned. "Probably the wind. These old buildings are full of drafts." But even as she said it, she remembered the sigh she'd heard earlier, a sound too soft, too deliberate to be just the wind. They sat in silence, listening. Somewhere down the hall, a floorboard groaned. The fire in the sitting room had long since died, leaving the house colder than before. Evelyn tried to steady her breathing, telling herself there was nothing to be afraid of. Suddenly, a faint melody drifted through the walls, a music box, its notes slow and mournful. Sarah's eyes widened. "Do you hear that?" Evelyn nodded, her skin prickling with goosebumps. "Stay here." She grabbed her phone and crept into the hallway, Sarah close behind. The corridor was cloaked in shadows, the only light coming from the moon outside. The music grew louder as they approached the staircase, each note echoing off the stone walls. They followed the sound to the landing, where a small table stood beneath a cracked mirror. Atop the table sat an antique music box, its lid open, the ballerina inside spinning slowly. Evelyn reached out and closed the lid. The music stopped, plunging the house into silence. "How did that start on its own?" Sarah whispered. Evelyn shook her head. "Maybe it's on a timer. Or maybe Thomas wounded earlier." Sarah didn't look convinced. "Let's go back to bed." They returned to Evelyn's room, but sleep wouldn't come. Evelyn lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night's events in her mind. The music box, the whispers, the chill that seemed to seep from the walls. None of it made sense. Hours passed. At some point, Sarah drifted off, her breathing slow and even. Evelyn envied her. She closed her eyes, willing herself to relax. That's when she heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping like fingernails against glass. She sat up, heart pounding. The sound was coming from the window. She crossed the room and pulled back the curtain. Outside, the garden was bathed in moonlight, the yew trees casting long, twisted shadows. For a moment, Evelyn saw nothing. Then, movement caught her eye, a figure standing at the edge of the lawn, dressed in white, her hair flowing in the breeze. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The woman stood perfectly still, her face turned toward the manor, eyes fixed on Evelyn's window. Even from a distance, Evelyn could feel the weight of her gaze, sad, pleading, desperate. She blinked, and the figure was gone. The garden was empty, the shadows undisturbed. Evelyn stumbled back, her hands shaking. She told herself it was a trick of the light, a product of exhaustion and nerves. But deep down, she knew better. She climbed back into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. Sarah stirred, mumbling in her sleep. Evelyn reached for a notebook, jotting down everything she'd seen and heard. She didn't want to forget a single detail. As dawn crept through the curtains, Evelyn finally drifted into a restless sleep. Her dreams were filled with music and whispers, and the sorrowful eyes of the woman in white. When she awoke, the room was filled with pale morning light. Sarah was gone, her bed neatly made. Evelyn sat up, rubbing her eyes. Had it all been a dream? She glanced at the window. On the glass, faint but unmistakable, were the prints of slender fingers, as if someone had been reaching in from the outside. Evelyn's skepticism wavered. Hollow Manor was full of secrets, and she was no longer sure she wanted to uncover them. The morning sun filtered weakly through the grimy windows of Hollow Manor, casting pale rectangles of light across the faded rug in Evelyn's room. She sat at the small desk, her notebook open, the events of the night before replaying in her mind. The music box, the whispers, the spectral figure in the garden. Each detail felt sharper in the daylight, as if the house itself wanted her to remember. She traced her finger over the faint fingerprints on the glass, still visible in the morning light, and shivered. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, a mug of tea cradled in her hands. "You're up early," she said, her voice still thick with sleep. Evelyn closed her notebook. "Couldn't sleep. Did you remember anything from last night?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. I remember the music box, and I remember dreaming about that woman in the portrait. She was crying. She kept saying something, but I couldn't hear her. Evelyn's pen hovered over the page. Do you think it was just a dream? Sarah shrugged, looking away. I don't know. This place feels heavy, like it's full of memories that don't belong to us. Evelyn glanced at her notes. I want to talk to Thomas. Maybe he knows more about what happened here. They found the caretaker in the kitchen, methodically chopping vegetables for a stew. The room was surprisingly bright, sunlight streaming in through a window over the sink. Thomas looked up as they entered, his expression unreadable. Good morning, ladies. Did you sleep well? Sarah shot Evelyn a nervous glance. Evelyn cleared her throat. We had a strange night. There was a music box playing in the hall, and I thought I saw someone in the garden. Thomas's knife paused mid-chop. This house is old. It makes noises, and the grounds attract all sorts of wildlife. Evelyn pressed on. Who was the woman in the portrait above the mantel? Sarah dreamed about her. Thomas set the knife down and wiped his hands on a towel. That was Lady Eleanor Ashcombe, Lord Ashcombe's daughter. She died here, along with her mother, in 1863. The official story is illness, but there were rumors. Servants said they saw her wandering the halls at night, long after she'd passed. Sarah hugged herself. What kind of rumors? Thomas's eyes grew distant. Some say she was in love with a stable boy. Forbidden, of course. When her father found out, he sent the boy away. Lady Eleanor fell into despair. She and her mother both died that winter. Some say of broken hearts. Others whisper of something darker. Evelyn scribbled notes furiously. And the hauntings? Thomas's jaw tightened. People claim to see Lady Eleanor in the gardens or hear her crying in the night. Some guests have left after only one night, swearing they were watched by unseen eyes. I've worked here for 20 years. I keep to my duties and leave the past alone. Evelyn noticed the way his hands trembled as he picked up the knife again. Have you ever seen anything? He shook his head, but his eyes slid away from hers. No, but I hear things. Doors closing, footsteps in empty rooms. Sometimes I find things moved, candles lit, windows opened. It's best not to dwell on it. Sarah sipped her tea, her eyes wide. Why do you stay? Thomas gave a sad smile. It's my home, such as it is, and someone has to look after the place. Evelyn closed her notebook. Would you mind if we explore the manor today? I like to see the old family wing, maybe the library. Thomas hesitated, then nodded. Stay out of the west wing. It's not safe. The floorboards are rotten. And don't go into the cellar. The doors are locked for a reason. His warning hung in the air as the sisters left the kitchen. Evelyn's curiosity was piqued. She led Sarah down a long corridor lined with more portraits. Generations of Ashcombes, their faces growing more severe with each passing decade. They reached the library, a cavernous room filled with dust and the scent of old paper. Sunlight slanted through stained glass windows, painting the floor in jewel tones. Evelyn ran her fingers along the spines of leather-bound volumes, many of them crumbling with age. Sarah wandered to a writing desk in the corner. Look at this, she called. Evelyn joined her, peering over her shoulder. The desk was littered with yellowed letters, all addressed to Lady Eleanor. The handwriting was elegant, the ink faded to brown. Evelyn picked up one and read aloud. My dearest Eleanor, I cannot bear this separation. Each day without you is a torment. Your father forbids me from writing, but I cannot stay away. Meet me by the yew tree at midnight, and we shall run away together." She trailed off, glancing at Sarah. These must be from the stable boy. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She never got to leave, did she? Evelyn shook her head. No, and it sounds like her father made sure of it. They spent the next hour sifting through the letters, piecing together the tragic love story. The last letter was unfinished, the ink smeared as if by tears. As they left the library, Evelyn paused by a window overlooking the garden. The yew tree stood tall and silent, its branches swaying in the breeze. She imagined Lady Eleanor waiting beneath it, heart full of hope and dread. Sarah touched her arm. "Do you think she's still here?" "Waiting." Evelyn didn't answer, but as they turned away, she thought she saw a pale figure standing beneath the tree, watching them with sorrowful eyes. The rest of the day passed in a haze of uneasy quiet. Evelyn and Sarah wandered the halls of Hollow Manor, their footsteps muffled by threadbare carpets and the omnipresent hush that seemed to press in from all sides. The house felt larger than it had in the morning, its corridors stretching on, each doorway leading to another shadowed room filled with relics of the past. The air was thick with the scent of dust and old wood, and every so often, Evelyn caught herself glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see the sorrowful eyes of Lady Eleanor watching from the gloom. By late afternoon, the sisters found themselves in a small parlor at the back of the manor. The room was brighter than most, its windows overlooking a tangle of neglected rose bushes. Sarah sat curled in an armchair, sketching absent-mindedly in her notebook, while Evelyn pored over her own notes, trying to piece together the fragments of the Ashcombe family's history. A sudden chill swept through the room, making Sarah shiver. She looked up, her pencil poised in midair. "Did you feel that?" Evelyn nodded, rubbing her arms. "It's like the temperature just dropped 10 degrees. They exchanged a nervous glance. The fire in the hearth had burned low, but it wasn't just the cold that unsettled them. There was a sense of being watched, as if the walls themselves were leaning in, listening to every word. Evelyn stood up, restless. "I want to see the yew tree," she said. "The one from the letters." Sarah hesitated, glancing at the darkening sky. "Do you really think that's a good idea?" Evelyn forced a smile. "It's just a tree, Sarah. Besides, if Lady Eleanor's spirit is still here, maybe that's where she feels safest." They donned their coats and made their way outside, the air crisp and sharp with the scent of impending rain. The grounds were wild and overgrown, the once manicured gardens now a tangle of weeds and brambles. The yew tree stood at the far end of the lawn, its branches heavy and dark, casting a long shadow across the grass. As they approached, Evelyn felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. The air beneath the tree was colder still, and the silence was absolute. No bird song, no rustle of leaves, just the sound of their own breathing. Sarah reached out, her fingers brushing the rough bark. "It feels sad," she whispered, "like it remembers everything that happened here." Evelyn knelt at the base of the tree, searching the ground. After a moment, she found something half buried in the earth, a small silver locket tarnished with age. She wiped it clean on her sleeve and opened it. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman, Eleanor, without a doubt, and a lock of pale hair. Sarah gasped. Do you think she dropped it? Evelyn nodded, her heart pounding. Maybe she was waiting for him, and when he didn't come, she left this behind. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the branches, scattering dead leaves across the lawn. The sisters stood, shivering, and hurried back toward the house. As they reached the steps, Evelyn glanced back. For a split second, she thought she saw a figure standing beneath the yew tree, a woman in white, her face obscured by shadows. Inside, the manor felt even colder than before. The lights flickered as they entered the main hall, and somewhere above, a door slammed shut with a force that rattled the windows. Sarah clutched Evelyn's arm. Something's not right. Evelyn tried to steady her nerves. Maybe it's just the storm coming in. But as they moved through the house, the sense of unease grew. Doors that had been closed were now ajar, and the faint scent of roses, impossible for the season, drifted through the corridors. In the library, the letters they had left neatly stacked were now scattered across the floor, as if someone or something had rifled through them in a frenzy. Evelyn knelt to gather them, her hands trembling. This doesn't make sense. We were the last ones in here. Sarah's voice was barely audible. Maybe we're not alone. A sudden crash echoed from upstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, light, hurried, and unmistakably human. The sisters froze, listening as the footsteps moved from room to room, pausing outside their own doors before continuing down the hall. Evelyn grabbed Sarah's hand. We need to find Thomas. They hurried to the caretaker's quarters, but the room was empty, the bed neatly made, the lamp unlit. A note sat on the pillow, gone to town for supplies. Back by nightfall, Evelyn cursed under her breath. Of course, they returned to the sitting room, locking the door behind them. Sarah paced back and forth, her anxiety mounting. What if the stories are true? What if Lady Eleanor really is trapped here? Evelyn tried to sound confident, but her voice shook. If she is, maybe she's trying to tell us something. Maybe she wants us to help her. Sarah stopped pacing, her eyes wide. Ow! Evelyn thought of the locket, the letters, the sorrowful eyes in the portrait. We need to find out what really happened to her. Maybe if we can uncover the truth, we can set her free. The wind howled louder, rattling the windows. The house seemed to shudder, as if in agreement or warning. As night fell, the sisters sat by the dying fire, clutching each other for warmth and comfort. Somewhere in the darkness, a woman's voice began to sing, a lullaby, soft and haunting, echoing through the empty halls. Evelyn closed her eyes, listening. The song was full of longing and sorrow, a plea for release that resonated deep within her soul. Whatever haunted Hollow Manor was growing stronger, and it was only a matter of time before it revealed itself. Night fell over Hollow Manor like a heavy shroud, swallowing the last traces of daylight and replacing them with a darkness so complete it felt almost alive. Evelyn and Sarah huddled together in the sitting room, the dying embers of the fire casting long, flickering shadows across the walls. The house was silent now, save for the wind moaning through the eaves and the occasional creak of ancient timbers settling into the night. Evelyn's mind raced as she turned the locket over in her hands, its silver surface cool and smooth. The photograph of Lady Eleanor inside seemed to gaze back at her with pleading eyes, and Evelyn felt an odd sense of responsibility, as if she had been chosen to uncover the truth that had been buried for so long. Sarah sat across from her, knees drawn up to her chest, staring into the fire. "I keep thinking about that lullaby," she said quietly. "It was the same tune I heard in my dream last night. The woman, Eleanor, she was singing it to someone. I think it was a child." Evelyn frowned. "A child? There's nothing in the records about Eleanor having a child." Sarah shook her head. "I know what I saw. She was holding a baby, rocking it by the window. She looked so sad, like she knew something terrible was going to happen." Evelyn jotted this down in her notebook. Her curiosity piqued. Maybe there's more to her story than we thought. If she had a child, and something happened to it. A sudden chill swept through the room, extinguishing the last of the embers. The sisters shivered as the darkness pressed in around them. Evelyn stood and lit a candle, its small flame casting a fragile circle of light. "We should go back to the library," she said. "There might be something we missed, letters, journals, anything that could tell us more about Eleanor's life." Sarah hesitated, glancing at the darkened hallway. "Do we have to go now?" Evelyn forced a reassuring smile. "The sooner we find answers, the sooner we can help her. Besides, I don't think we'll be able to sleep until we do." They made their way through the silent corridors, the candle flickering in Evelyn's hand. The library was just as they'd left it, except now the air felt even colder, and the shadows seemed to pool in the corners like spilled ink. Evelyn began searching the shelves, running her fingers over the spines of old books. Sarah wandered to the writing desk, rifling through the drawers. After a few minutes, she let out a soft gasp. "Evelyn, look at this." Evelyn hurried over. Sarah held up a small, leather-bound diary, its cover embossed with the initials EA. She opened it to the first page, where a delicate hand had written, "This diary belongs to Eleanor Ashcombe. May my words find peace, even if I cannot." Evelyn's hands trembled as she turned the pages. The entries began innocently enough, descriptions of daily life, her love for the gardens, her longing for freedom. But as the months passed, the tone grew darker. "Father has forbidden me from seeing William. He says I'm bringing shame to the family. But my heart cannot forget him. I fear what Father might do if he discovers the truth." A few pages later, the writing became frantic, the ink smudged. "I am with child. William does not know. I dare not tell anyone. Mother suspects, I think, but she says nothing. I'm so afraid." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She was all alone. Evelyn nodded, her heart aching for the young woman who had suffered in silence. She read on, the entries growing more desperate. "Father found out. He was furious. He locked me in my room and sent for the doctor. I heard them talking. He wants to send me away to a place where no one will know my shame. I cannot let that happen. I must find William. We must run away as we planned." The last entry was dated the night before Eleanor's death. "The pain is unbearable. I hear voices in the hall. Father, the doctor, mother weeping. I fear I will not see the morning. If anyone finds this, please remember me not as a disgrace, but as a woman who loved too deeply." Evelyn closed the diary, her hands shaking. She died in childbirth. That's why her spirit can't rest. Sarah wiped her eyes. "And the baby?" Evelyn shook her head. "There's no mention of what happened. Maybe the child died, too. Or maybe..." A sudden crash echoed from the hallway, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. The sisters froze, listening as the footsteps drew closer, then stopped just outside the library door. Evelyn blew out the candle, plunging them into darkness. They held their breath, hearts pounding as the door creaked open. A cold wind swept through the room, carrying with it the scent of roses and something darker. Fear, sorrow, longing. In the faint moonlight, they saw her, Lady Eleanor, her white gown stained with tears, her eyes hollow with grief. She stood in the doorway, her gaze fixed on the diary in Evelyn's hands. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please help me." Then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she vanished, leaving only the echo of her plea and the lingering chill of her presence. Evelyn and Sarah clung to each other, the weight of Eleanor's sorrow pressing down on them. They knew now what they had to do. They had to find the truth about the child. Only then could they hope to free Lady Eleanor and themselves from the grip of Hollow Manor's haunting past. The morning after Lady Eleanor's apparition, Hollow Manor felt even heavier, as if the house itself mourned along with its restless ghost. Evelyn awoke to a pale, watery sunlight filtering through her curtains, but the chill in her bones had not faded. She found Sarah already awake, sitting at the small desk, the diary open before her, eyes red from lack of sleep. Neither spoke for a long moment. The events of the night before hung between them, too real to dismiss as dreams, too strange to fully comprehend. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. "We have to find out what happened to the baby. It's the only way." Evelyn nodded, her mind already racing through possibilities. If Eleanor died in childbirth, and the baby wasn't mentioned in any records, maybe the family tried to cover it up. Maybe the child was taken away, or she stopped, unwilling to voice the darker possibilities. Sarah closed the diary gently. "Let's start with the attic. Old houses like this always have secrets hidden away up there." They dressed quickly and made their way through the winding corridors, the diary clutched tightly in Sarah's hand. The attic door was at the end of a narrow, dust-choked hallway in the west wing, the part Thomas had warned them to avoid. The floor creaked ominously beneath their feet as they climbed the rickety staircase, each step stirring up motes of dust that danced in the slanted sunlight. The attic was vast, filled with trunks, broken furniture, and boxes stacked high with forgotten belongings. The air was thick with the scent of mothballs and old paper. Evelyn hesitated at the threshold, her nerves jangling. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah nodded, determination hardening her features. "If there's anything left of Eleanor's story, it'll be here." They began to search, opening trunks and rifling through boxes. Most contained nothing but old clothes, brittle letters, and yellowed newspapers. But in the far corner, beneath a moth-eaten tapestry, Sarah found a small wooden chest with a tarnished brass lock. The initials EA were carved into the lid. Evelyn's hands trembled as she tried the latch. To her surprise, it opened easily. Inside was a bundle of baby clothes, carefully folded and tied with a faded blue ribbon. Beneath them, wrapped in a piece of lace, was a birth certificate. Sarah read aloud, her voice wavering. "Name, William Ashcombe. Mother, Eleanor Ashcombe. Father." She paused. The line for the father's name was left blank. Evelyn's breath caught. She named him after the stable boy. There was more. A letter written in the same elegant hand as the diary, addressed to "My dearest William." Evelyn read, "If you're reading this, it means I am gone. I wanted you to know that you were loved, even if the world tried to keep us apart. I pray that you will find happiness wherever you are. Forgive me for leaving you alone." Tears pricked Evelyn's eyes. She glanced at Sarah, who was staring at the little clothes, her expression stricken. "Do you think he survived?" Evelyn shook her head. "If he did, he was hidden away, maybe sent to an orphanage or given to another family. But why would Eleanor's ghost still be here if her child lived?" Sarah looked down at the diary, flipping to the last, unfinished page. There, in shaky handwriting, was a single sentence. "They took him from me. I hear his cries in the night." The attic seemed to grow colder. Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself. She lost him. That's why she can't rest. A sudden gust of wind rattled the attic window. The sisters jumped, their nerves frayed. Evelyn closed the chest and tucked the letter and birth certificate into her bag. "We need to show this to Thomas. He's been here the longest. Maybe he knows what happened to the baby." They made their way back downstairs, the house creaking and groaning around them. In the kitchen, Thomas was stirring a pot of soup, his back to the door. He turned as they entered, his eyes narrowing at the sight of the chest in Evelyn's hands. "You've been in the attic," he said quietly. Evelyn nodded, setting the chest on the table. "We found Eleanor's diary and her son's birth certificate. Why wasn't there any record of him?" Thomas sighed, his shoulders sagging. He motioned for them to sit. It was a different time. Lord Ashcombe was obsessed with the family's reputation. When Eleanor died, he told everyone she'd been ill. The baby was taken away before anyone could ask questions. I heard he was sent to a foundling home in London. No one ever spoke of him again. Sarah's voice trembled. "Did he survive?" Thomas shook his head. "No one knows. The records from those homes were lost in a fire years ago. But some say his cries could be heard in the nursery long after he was gone." A heavy silence fell. Evelyn reached for the diary, her resolve hardening. Eleanor's spirit is trapped because of what happened. She's searching for her child, even in death. We need to help her find peace. Thomas looked at her, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Ow!" Evelyn thought of the locket, the diary, the letter. "We have to return these to her. Maybe if we lay them to rest at the yew tree where she waited for William, she'll finally be free." Thunder rumbled in the distance and the lights flickered. The house seemed to tremble, as if bracing itself for what was to come. Sarah stood, determination in her eyes. "Let's do it tonight, before we lose our nerve." Evelyn nodded, clutching the diary and the locket to her chest. For the first time since arriving at Hollow Manor, she felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to right a century-old wrong and bring peace to a soul who had suffered too long. As dusk fell, the sisters prepared for the ritual that would either end the haunting or unleash something far worse. The storm broke just after nightfall, rain lashing against the windows and thunder shaking the ancient bones of Hollow Manor. Evelyn and Sarah gathered their findings: the diary, the locket, the letter, and the tiny bundle of baby clothes, spreading them out on the sitting room table. The air was thick with anticipation and fear, each sister acutely aware that what they were about to attempt could change everything. Thomas entered quietly, his face drawn and pale. He carried a battered wooden box, which he set down with a soft thud. "If you're truly set on this," he said, "you'll need these." He opened the box to reveal a collection of candles, a small silver bell, and a faded book of prayers. "My grandmother was a medium. She taught me a few things. Sometimes the dead only need to know they're heard." Evelyn nodded, her resolve firm. We want to help her. We want to help them both find peace. The three of them arrange the candles in a circle on the floor, placing the diary and locket at the center, along with the baby clothes and letter. Sarah lit each candle in turn, her hands trembling. The flames flickered and danced, casting eerie shadows on the walls. They sat cross-legged around the circle, holding hands. Thomas cleared his throat and began to read from a book, his voice low and steady despite the storm raging outside. We call upon the spirits of this house, those who linger in sorrow and longing. We are here to listen, to bear witness, and to offer peace. The wind howled, rattling the windows. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the temperature in the room plummeted, and the candle flames bent toward the center of the circle, as if drawn by an invisible force. Sarah squeezed Evelyn's hand. She's here. I can feel her. Evelyn's breath came in shallow gasps. The air was thick, pressing down on her chest. She closed her eyes and focused on the objects in the circle, willing Eleanor's spirit to come forward. A faint sobbing filled the room, so soft at first that Evelyn thought she was imagining it. But it grew louder, more desperate, a mother's cry for a lost child. The diary pages fluttered as if caught in a breeze, and the locket trembled on the floor. Thomas rang the silver bell, its clear note slicing through the gloom. Eleanor Ashcombe, we are here. We know your pain. We have found your story, and we honor your love. If you wish to speak, we are listening. The sobbing ceased. In its place, a cold, gentle presence settled over the circle. Evelyn opened her eyes and gasped. Lady Eleanor stood before them, her white gown glowing faintly in the candlelight, her face streaked with tears. She looked down at the diary and the locket, her hands trembling. "My son," she whispered, her voice echoing with centuries of grief. "Where's my son?" Sarah's voice was barely audible. "He was taken from you, but you loved him. You love him so much." Eleanor knelt by the circle, her fingers passing through the diary as if through mist. "I hear him crying. Every night I hear him." Evelyn's heart ached. "We found his birth certificate, Eleanor. He was named William, after his father. He was sent away, but we don't know what happened to him. The records were lost." Eleanor's form flickered, her sorrow deepening. "He was alone. I cannot save him. I cannot hold him." Thomas spoke softly. "You did what you could. Your love endures, even now. Let that love guide you to peace." The wind outside rose to a furious pitch, and the candles guttered. The baby clothes lifted gently, swirling in the air before settling at Eleanor's feet. She reached for them, her hands trembling. A new sound joined the storm, a baby's cry, faint but unmistakable, echoing through the halls. Eleanor's eyes widened, and she looked toward the door. The cry grew louder, filling the room with longing and hope. Sarah began to weep, her tears falling onto the floorboards. "He's here, Eleanor. He's waiting for you." Eleanor stood, her form growing brighter. The baby's cry became a soft coo, and for a moment, Evelyn thought she saw a small, glowing shape in Eleanor's arms. A child, cradled and comforted at last. "Thank you," Eleanor whispered, her voice filled with peace. "Thank you for remembering us." The candles flickered wildly, then went out all at once. The room plunged into darkness, the storm outside suddenly fading to a gentle rain. When Evelyn relit a candle, Eleanor was gone. Only the diary and locket remained, resting peacefully in the circle. The sisters sat in stunned silence. The weight of the haunting lifted at last. Thomas closed the book of prayers, his hand steady. "She's gone," he said quietly. "She's finally at rest." Evelyn wiped her eyes, her heart full of relief and sorrow. "We did it. We really did it." Sarah nodded, her face shining with tears and hope. "She's with her son now. They're both free." As the storm passed and dawn crept over the horizon, Hollow Manor felt lighter, as if the house itself had been unburdened of its grief. The sisters knew their work was not yet done. There were still stories to tell and memories to honor. But for the first time since they'd arrived, they felt truly safe. And somewhere, in the quiet heart of the manor, a mother and child found the peace they had been denied for so long. The morning after the seance, Hollow Manor was transformed. The oppressive gloom that had haunted the halls seemed to have lifted, replaced by a gentle stillness. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced lazily in the air. For the first time since arriving, Evelyn and Sarah felt as though they could breathe deeply, as if the house had exhaled a sigh of relief. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, her notebook open, scribbling down every detail she could remember from the night before. The images replayed in her mind. Eleanor's sorrowful face, the swirling baby clothes, the ethereal reunion between mother and child. Sarah joined her, a mug of tea warming her hands. "Did you sleep?" Evelyn asked, glancing up. Sarah shook her head, but there was a lightness in her eyes. "Not much, but I don't feel afraid anymore. It's like she's really gone." Evelyn nodded. "We did something important, Sarah. We gave her peace." Thomas entered, carrying a tray of fresh bread and butter. He looked different, too. Less burdened, his shoulders no longer hunched as if carrying the weight of the manor's secrets. He set the tray down and sat across from them. "I owe you both an apology," he began, his voice gentler than they'd ever heard it. "I should have told you the truth from the start. About Eleanor, about the child, about myself." Evelyn set her pen down, curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Thomas took a deep breath. "My grandmother was one of the last servants here before the Ashcombe family left. She was just a girl when Eleanor died. She told me stories about the night Eleanor gave birth, about Lord Ashcombe's rage, about the baby being taken away. But there was something she never told anyone else." He paused, looking down at his hands. "She confessed it to me before she died. The child, William, didn't die in the orphanage. He was hidden away, right here in the manor, for almost a year. My grandmother and another maid cared for him in secret at Eleanor's request. Lord Ashcombe never knew. When the rumors of a crying baby grew too loud, my grandmother took William and left for London. She raised him as her own." Sarah's eyes widened. "So, you're related to Eleanor?" Thomas nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "William was my grandfather. I grew up hearing stories about Hollow Manor, about the mother who loved her child so fiercely that her spirit lingered here. My grandmother never wanted to come back, but after she died, I felt drawn to this place. I thought if I could care for it, maybe I could make amends for what happened." Evelyn reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "You did more than that. You helped us give Eleanor and William peace." Thomas smiled, a weight lifting from his features. "Thank you, both of you. I think my family can finally rest now, too." They sat in companionable silence, the sun warming their faces. After breakfast, Evelyn and Sarah wandered the grounds, retracing their steps to the yew tree. The grass beneath it was damp with dew, but the air felt fresh and clean. Evelyn knelt at the base of the tree, placing the locket and diary in a small hollow between the roots. "Rest now, Eleanor," she whispered. "Your story won't be forgotten." Sarah placed a single white rose beside the diary, her eyes shining with tears. "Thank you for trusting us." As they stood, a gentle breeze rustled the branches, and for a moment, Evelyn thought she heard a woman's laughter, soft, joyful, and free. She smiled, knowing it was Eleanor's final goodbye. Back inside, Evelyn packed her things, her notebook now filled with the stories she'd come to find. But it was more than just a ghost story. It was a tale of love, loss, and the power of remembrance. She knew it would touch her readers, just as it had touched her. Sarah wandered through the manor one last time, pausing at the portrait of Lady Eleanor above the mantel. The woman's eyes seemed brighter now, her expression peaceful. Sarah reached out, tracing the outline of the frame. "Goodbye," she whispered. Thomas met them at the door as they prepared to leave. He handed Evelyn a small envelope. "For you. My grandmother wanted the truth to be known, but she was always afraid. I think you'll know what to do with it." Evelyn opened the envelope in the car. Inside was a faded photograph. Eleanor, holding a baby, her face radiant with love. On the back, in delicate script, were the words, "For William, so he will always know he was loved." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. She tucked the photograph into her notebook, determined to honor Eleanor's memory. As they drove away, Hollow Manor receded into the distance, its windows gleaming in the morning sun. The house was no longer a place of sorrow, but one of healing, a testament to the enduring power of love and the importance of facing the past. Sarah glanced at her sister, a smile playing at her lips. "Do you think there are more stories like this out there?" Evelyn squeezed her hand. "I know there are, and we're going to find them." The road stretched ahead, bright and full of promise. Behind them, Hollow Manor stood silent and at peace, its ghost finally laid to rest. The sisters' car rolled down the winding lane, Hollow Manor shrinking behind them, but Evelyn's mind was restless. The story felt unfinished, as if some final thread still needed to be tied. She glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the manor's silhouette flicker with ghostly light, but all she saw was the pale morning sun and the gentle sway of the yew trees. Sarah, sensing her unease, reached over and squeezed her hand. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. I feel like we missed something. Like the house isn't done with us yet." Sarah shivered, pulling her coat tighter. "We helped Eleanor and William. We gave them peace. What more could there be?" But as they reached the edge of the estate, Evelyn's phone buzzed with a message. It was from Thomas. "Come back. There's something you need to see." The sisters exchanged a glance, dread and curiosity mingling in their chests. Without a word, Evelyn turned the car around and headed back toward the manor. The house looked different as they approached. Lighter, yes, but also somehow expectant, as if holding its breath. Thomas met them at the door, his face grave. He led them inside, not to the sitting room or the kitchen, but to a door they hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a faded tapestry in the west wing. This was Lord Ashcombe's private study, Thomas explained. It's been locked for decades. After last night, I found a key among my grandmother's things. I think it's time you see what's inside. The sisters followed him down a narrow corridor. Thomas unlocked the door, and it swung open with a groan. The room beyond was small and windowless, lined with shelves of dusty books and ledgers. A heavy desk dominated the center, its surface cluttered with papers yellowed by time. Evelyn's breath caught as she stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of old ink and secrets. She moved to the desk, her fingers brushing over the papers. Most were financial records, but one leather-bound journal stood out. She opened it, scanning the neat, precise handwriting. It was Lord Ashcombe's diary. She read aloud, her voice trembling. October 1863. Eleanor is gone. I have failed her. The child. I cannot bear to look upon him. He is a reminder of everything I have lost. I have sent him away, as was necessary. May God forgive me. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. He regretted it. He knew what he'd done was wrong. Evelyn flipped through more entries. Lord Ashcombe wrote of his grief, his anger, and his growing obsession with the supernatural. He described hearing Eleanor's cries in the night, seeing her ghostly form in the halls, feeling her sorrow seep into the very stones of the manor. She will not rest. I see her in my dreams, always searching, always weeping. I have tried to make amends, but it is too late. The house is cursed by my actions. I am cursed. Thomas placed a trembling hand on Evelyn's shoulder. There's more. He led them to a small safe built into the wall. Using a key from his grandmother's box, he unlocked it. Inside was a bundle of letters. Eleanor's final words to her father, never delivered. There was also a tiny silver rattle, engraved with the name William. Sarah gasped, tears streaming down her face. He kept these. He couldn't let go. Evelyn gathered the letters and the rattle, her heart aching. We need to do something with these. They're the last pieces of the story. Thomas nodded. I think you should take them to the yew tree. That's where it all began and where it should end. The sisters returned to the garden, the morning sun breaking through the clouds. They knelt at the base of the yew tree, placing the rattle and the letters beside the locket and diary. Evelyn spoke softly, her voice steady. Eleanor, William, Lord Ashcombe, your story is finished now. Your secrets are no longer hidden. May you all find the peace you were denied in life. A gentle breeze stirred the branches, and for a moment, the air shimmered with golden light. The sisters felt a warmth settle over them, a sense of closure and forgiveness. As they stood, Evelyn glanced back at the manor. In the upper window, she thought she saw 3 figures: Eleanor, William, and Lord Ashcombe, standing together, their faces serene. Then, as she blinked, the vision faded, leaving only sunlight and the gentle rustle of leaves. Sarah slipped her arm through Evelyn's. It's over. We did it. Evelyn smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes, we really did. They walked back to the car. The weight of the past finally lifted. Hollow Manor stood silent and peaceful behind them, its ghosts at rest, its secrets revealed. And as they drove away for the last time, the sisters knew they had not only freed a family from their torment, but had also found a deeper bond with each other, a bond forged in courage, compassion, and the willingness to face the darkness together. The road away from Hollow Manor shimmered in the morning sunlight, winding through the misty English countryside. Evelyn drove in silence, her thoughts swirling with everything she and Sarah had experienced. The car was filled with the scent of old paper and wildflowers, remnants of the manor and the garden where they had finally laid the Ashcombe family's secrets to rest. Sarah watched the landscape roll by, her face calm but contemplative. She finally broke the silence. "Do you think they're really gone? The ghosts, I mean." Evelyn nodded, though a part of her still felt the weight of all they had witnessed. "I think so. I think Eleanor, William, and even Lord Ashcombe finally found peace. We helped them finish their story." Sarah smiled softly. "I hope so. I keep thinking about Eleanor, how she waited all those years trapped by grief. And Thomas, imagine growing up with that legacy, never really knowing the truth." Evelyn glanced at her sister, grateful for her presence. "We did what we could, and now it's time to share their story with the world." They stopped at a small cafe in the next village, ordering breakfast and strong coffee. Evelyn pulled out her notebook, flipping through the pages filled with observations, sketches, and fragments of conversation. She began outlining the article that would become her most important work. Not just a ghost story, but a chronicle of love, loss, and the healing power of truth. As she wrote, Sarah wandered outside, drawn to a nearby churchyard. She wandered among the ancient gravestones, reading the names and dates, wondering how many other stories had been lost to time. At the far end of the yard, she found a small, weathered stone, half buried in moss. The inscription was nearly illegible, but she could just make out the name William A. and the date that matched the year Eleanor's child would have been born. Sarah knelt, brushing away the moss. She felt a sense of peace settle over her, as if the child's spirit, so long separated from his mother, had finally been acknowledged. She whispered a quiet prayer, then returned to the cafe. Evelyn looked up as Sarah entered, her eyes shining. "You found something, didn't you?" Sarah nodded. "Agrave. I think it's Williams. He made it, Evie. He survived long enough to be remembered." Evelyn's heart swelled with emotion. Then the story really is complete. They finished their meal and set out for home, the countryside bright and full of promise. As they drove, Evelyn spoke about her plans for the article. "I want people to know the real story, not just the rumors or the ghost tales, but the truth about Eleanor's courage, William's legacy, and even Lord Ashcombe's regret." Sarah smiled. "It'll help others too. Maybe people will look at old houses and forgotten graves differently. Maybe they'll remember that every ghost story starts with a real person." The sisters fell into a comfortable silence, the bond between them stronger than ever. The ordeal at Hollow Manor had changed them both, made them braver, more compassionate, and more determined to seek out the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried. When they reached home, Evelyn set to work on her article, pouring her heart into every word. She included photographs of the manor, the yew tree, and the faded portrait of Eleanor. She quoted from the diary, shared Thomas's revelations, and described the seance that had finally brought peace to the restless spirits. The article was published a month later, and the response was overwhelming. Readers from all over the country wrote to Evelyn, sharing their own stories of haunted houses and family secrets. Some thanked her for giving voice to the forgotten. while others asked for her help in uncovering the mysteries of their own pasts. Evelyn and Sarah became known as the Ghost Sisters, traveling to other historic homes and unraveling the stories hidden within their walls. Each investigation brought new challenges and new friendships, but none would ever be as personal or as profound as their time at Hollow Manor. Thomas kept in touch, sending updates about the manor's restoration. He reported that the house was peaceful now. No more cold spots, no more whispers in the night. He had opened the manor to visitors, sharing its history and honoring the memory of Eleanor and William. The yew tree became a place of quiet reflection, a symbol of love enduring beyond death. On the anniversary of their first night at Hollow Manor, Evelyn and Sarah returned for a visit. They found the manor bustling with life, tourists wandering the halls, children playing in the gardens, and Thomas greeting guests with a smile. The house was no longer a place of sorrow, but a beacon of hope and remembrance. As evening fell, the sisters stood beneath the yew tree, watching the sun set behind the manor's turrets. Evelyn took Sarah's hand, her heart full. "We did it," she whispered. "We gave them peace, and found it for ourselves, too." Sarah squeezed her hand. "And we'll keep searching. There are more stories out there, waiting to be told." The last rays of sunlight bathed the manor in gold, and for a moment, Evelyn thought she saw a woman in white standing at the window, her face serene and grateful. She smiled, knowing that some bonds could never be broken, and that love, once given, could echo through the centuries. As darkness fell, the sisters walked back to the manor, ready to face whatever mysteries the world might hold. Hollow Manor stood behind them, silent and at peace, its ghosts finally at rest, its story finally told.